Welcome to everybody. We're delighted to be joined by the management of Ergomed today, having just released extremely encouraging full year results and also given an update on their future strategy, which we'll hear a lot more detail on. We're joined by the CEO and still CFO Stephen Stamp, and also by Dr Jan Petracek, who's the COO of Ergomed and was of course the founder and CEO of PharmInvent that Ergomed purchased last year, and he is running the exciting Pharmacovigilance unit at the moment. So, a lot to talk about, Stephen. Can you perhaps draw out the highlights of the results and the future strategy for us?
Delighted. Thanks, Andy. So the highlights of the results were top line growth of 36%, leaving us with net service revenue of £39.6 million. Very pleasing result. Our second KPI is in adjusted EBITDA. EBITDA for the year was 2.8 million, compares with 2.8 million the prior year. However, that was after spending 2.7 million on R&D this year, compared with 1.3 last year. So if you add the R&D back to derive a services revenue, and I'll tell you why that's important in a second, actually services EBITDA was 5.5 million this year, compared with 4.1 last year, so nice growth.
And R&D will be less important to you going forward, it sounds like.
It will. So a couple of reasons for that. Over the last couple of months we've been working hard on strategy for the company, and I wouldn't say this is sort of a revolution, more of an evolution in refinement of our strategy. We hitherto would have described our mission, I think, as building a profitable service business alongside sustainable drug development. Our mission today is building a profitable service business, but with laser focus on becoming the world leader in both pharmacovigilance and orphan drug development. So the development side of the business will have less emphasis for sure going forward.
And presumably that evolution of strategy reflects what you've seen from your portfolio of activities in the past and the opportunities that you can see in the areas that you're now focusing on going forward.
Absolutely, yes. Function of both.
And looking at the 2017 results, how does the traditional CRO business compare to pharmacovigilance in terms of growth and indeed the proportion of sales that are coming through to the top line group?
Right. Well, the pharmacovigilance business, as has been the case for the last couple of 3 years actually, is the star performer once again. Kudos to Jan and his team. They delivered 68% growth on prior year, which is a fantastic result. The CRO business suffered a little bit for some exchange headwinds, delivered 9% growth on prior year, both nicely ahead of their respective industry targets. In terms of how the business breaks out today, net service revenue, that is 56% of it is coming from pharmacovigilance, which is the first time the majority is coming from pharmacovigilance, which is important, I would suggest, from an investor perspective, because pharmacovigilance has a higher quality of earnings in terms of repeatability and predictability because of the nature of his business, whereas the CRO business, albeit high margin, is project based, and therefore projects start, they finish, they have to be replaced, whereas there's more of a continuum in the pharmacovigilance business.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll hear a lot more from Jan in a minute or two about the specific opportunities in pharmacovigilance to expand that very good share and attractive growth. Can you say a little bit more about the spread of activities in CRO?
Sure. So the CRO has now a 20-year track record of delivering for its clients. During that 20 years, the network has grown to 16 offices. We have run more than 600 trials and studied more than 125,000 patients. And even today we are running trials in 55 separate countries. So we've got the capability to manage trials on a global basis. We tend to specialize in oncology, immunology, neurology, and now with the acquisition of PSR, we're driving hard in the orphan drug space, because we think there are particular opportunities for us there.
Could you elaborate on those opportunities? What is the proportion of drugs that are prescribed that come from the orphan status? Is that a market that is growing, and do you have an estimate of total scale where all the products are added together?
So the data I've seen, Andy, about 21% of prescription products are actually prescribed for orphan diseases. The market's growing at about 11% per annum and is expected to be, I think, $200 billion by 2020. And believe it or not, orphan drugs are by definition relatively few numbers of patients, but added together 30 million people worldwide suffer from an orphan disease. So what's driving this market are a couple of things. One is the propensity towards personalized medicine, where what were once upon a time broader indications are now being subdivided based on the genetic makeup of individual patients. So what would have been some sort of cardiac indication previously is now being subdivided into 2 or 3 maybe different sub-indications. Secondly, the regulatory environment is now favoring orphan drug development. They get special protections, they get fast-tracked. And then thirdly, pricing. So payers are much less resistant towards orphan drugs in terms of reimbursement because there are relatively few patients. Also, the pricing of individual treatment can be quite nicely attractive to a pharma company.
Sounds an encouraging backcloth. And perhaps we can talk a little bit about co-development. Obviously not a focus going forward, but you have an existing portfolio of drugs in development with partners. And of course there was some significant news, some good news, some good bad news last year that perhaps you'd like to cover off.
Yeah.
Maybe starting with Peprostat, which was
Sure.
more encouraging.
Well, Peprostat obviously is a wholly owned product, not a risk share product within the co-development portfolio. It is the first product to come out of the hemostatics pipeline. It is a first-in-class synthetic peptide, so it's different from all the other products on the market. We ran a phase 2 study in 162 patients, and we were able to demonstrate that Peprostat, compared with standard of care, was able to reduce the time to hemostasis by 1.6 minutes, which is pretty significant in the context of surgery. So those were fantastic results.
Is that in the context of 5 or 10 minutes for the market standard beforehand? Or?
5 minutes, yes.
Okay, so it's a significant proportion.
It is significant. And we got very good qualitative feedback from the surgeons who use the product relative to standard of care. So, and there were no safety events. So that trial couldn't have gone any better, frankly. That now gives us something of a high-class problem, and then we have a phase 3 trial to run, which needs funding. Mm-hmm. So we have determined as a board that...
They don't get cheaper, the trials.
No, they don't. No, they don't. So we've determined as a board that we will pursue the further development of the hemostatics products through collaborations and partnerships with third parties. And my colleagues on the board are working hard on pulling those together.
Mm-hmm. So the situation with the existing co-development projects is that they will be run through in the manner you described, but presumably with the strategic focus on the higher growth of visible areas, no new co-development projects will be taken on.
That's the expectation, yes, correct.
Yep. And looking more at the prospects for expanding the growth and increasing scale where you have a strong position at the moment, is that going to be an organic focus? The company has been successful in executing M&A in the past. Given the scale of the opportunities you've described, it would seem sensible that you would be entertaining acquisitions in pharmacovigilance or indeed other areas.
So there are 3 components to our growth strategy, actually, 2 of which we are focusing in the services area. We do not want to become one of those companies that relies on acquisitions for growth. So we are very focused on delivering organic growth. We measure that ourselves and we report that too. And we're fortunate that we have the Pharmacovigilance business, which is driving that at 30+% per annum. Now we are receptive to acquisitions, but they need to meet the criteria. So the criteria are that they need to bring additional skills or capabilities to our overall services offering, or they need to fill in some geography. Now PSR, which we acquired last October, the orphan drug specialist CRO company, fits both of those criteria because it has brought specialist orphan drug development skills and a new territory, the Netherlands, where we weren't previously represented. So we are open to acquisitions in the pharmacovigilance area. Jan and I are working on some interesting opportunities there. He will explain to you the sort of spectrum of pharmacovigilance services, and we are looking at the sort of high-end, high-margin, high added value end of the value chain, as opposed to the case processing end. And then there is one CRO acquisition we're also looking at. So answer yes.
And in terms of addressing the orphan drug market, are there geographical areas that are more attractive because of genetic and historic influences that you might be looking at?
Well, the CRO acquisition we are looking at actually is based in the Middle East.
Okay.
So you're absolutely right. There is a high prevalence of genetic disorders which manifest in orphan diseases in the Middle East. So that would be a nice logical addition. It would add both geography and add to our specialist skills in orphan drug development.
Understood. Good. Well, perhaps a good time to move on to Jan and hear more about pharmacovigilance now.
Great.
So welcome, Jan. How many months have you been with Ergomed now, and are you enjoying it without embarrassing Stephen in the background here?
Thank you very much, Andy, for having me, first of all. Well, I joined Ergomed back in November 2016 as part of the acquisition of my company, PharmVigilance. I became first the president of PrimeVigilance, then back in April 2017, I was asked to step in as a CEO of PrimeVigilance, and back in December as a COO and a board member of the Ergomed Group.
Mm-hmm. And going back before PharmVigilance, what is your background and your interest in this particular area of pharmaceutical discovery?
I'm a medical doctor by background, and I'm working in pharmacovigilance for 18 years. The first 10 years as a senior regulator. My last position was the head of risk management at the European Medicines Agency, and I was lucky enough to be involved in design of the whole pharmacovigilance system, and I was representing the European Union in creation of the international guidelines at the ICH level. Then in 2010 I resigned from the European Medicines Agency and established PharmVigilance as a kind of a high added value consultancy in pharmacovigilance and risk management space. And I sold it back in 2016 to Ergomed, and enjoying the growth together with Ergomed ever since.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're ideally qualified to perhaps give us a little short definition about what is pharmacovigilance and why it's growing as rapidly as we're seeing from the results here.
So pharmacovigilance is a very broad set of activities and science. I think the best definition of pharmacovigilance is coming from WHO, World Health Organization. Mm-hmm. It's actually science and activities relating to detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse effects or any other drug-related problems. So essentially, all patient safety issues you can imagine that might be linked with the use of medicinal products are in remit of pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance is heavily regulated. It's not only the science and academic discipline, it's actually there is a lot of activities enforced by the regulators on pharmaceutical industry. So every pharma company and biotech company must have their pharmacovigilance system and medical information system, and that's where we can help. We are actually ensuring that the industry can focus on their core business, and we can take care of their pharmacovigilance and medical information system. The overall market for this is growing exponentially, I would say. It's predicted to reach $8 billion by 2024. The current rate of the growth is around 18% per year. Maybe half of it is in the outsourced segment of the market. I think there are three driving factors for this. The first one is tougher regulations, actually the record stuff, I would say. Second is that there is a growing enforcement of those regulations in both developed and developing markets. And the third one is that actually the products, there are so many products on the market that have safety issues today. So there is a growing number of adverse drug reactions, And there is also a growing number of communicated safety issues, primarily because of the social media. So it's no longer only a spontaneous report or reports from clinical trials. It's also anything that people share as patient reports or just sharing with friends on social media. We need to have systems to actually work with that.
Well, you can see, any market growing at 18% is pretty rapid, not only in your sector and any industrial sector these days. And what about Ergomed's focus, or what is happening on the outsourced market, presumably compared to what the large pharmaceutical businesses are doing or have done in-house?
So the drug safety and medical information business of Ergomed is operating under the brand of PrimeVigilance. And PrimeVigilance is growing much quicker than the market. Actually, we have 35% organic, 40% organic growth. And it's primarily because we can offer the full package. We are not only helping with the case processing or with the essential pharmacovigilance processes, we can also do a high added value parts like intermediate signal management, risk management, and also something that we call premium services like pharmacoepidemiology, additional risk minimization measures, referral procedures, for instance, defending the medicinal products in front of the regulators whenever there is a question about their benefit risk profile, and strategic consultancy. And there are very few companies out there who can do this spectrum of services. So I would say that's unique about Ergomed part of that business and PrimeVigilance.
Are you talking about independent companies that struggle to match your technical expertise? Or is it a case for the very large, global pharma giants that they can't find the necessary in-house skill sets and they're coming to you as well?
Absolutely, I think it's actually both. So the pharmacovigilance market has not been consolidated so far. So there's a lot of small players with niche expertise helping the pharma industry, and there are very big players doing mostly the large volume case processing. But very few companies are in between, and we are one of those, so we can actually help both of these players to actually mix and match the services to tailor it for particular clients' needs. So for instance, we are working with IQVIA to help them actually deliver some of those services because they simply can't. And we are thinking of acquisition of some niche consultancy companies to actually bolt on our expertise in those niche high added value parts of the pharmacovigilance business.
And what about as you said, it's the larger scale to more essential side of it. You are already as a group active in bringing automation into this process.
That's right.
Which sounds very exciting in terms of how quickly it can grow and presumably margin and cost implications for you, if you could give us a hint of those without sharing any confidential information with competitors.
Okay. I think it's well known in the industry that we are among the leaders of implementation of robotic process automation in pharmacovigilance space. And we are also working with the major safety database providers to develop further their automation tools within the safety databases. The last 4 months we have been piloting RPA in many of the pharmacovigilance processes. Some of the pilots actually have shown a significant increase in efficiency, up to 400 times in some of the processes. And we had the first operational robot serving 3 of our clients, and just last month it helped us to process 6,000 cases. We believe that...
So this is not beta testing, this is the real thing.
Oh, it's a real thing. We have even an approval from regulators to use the digital workforce in addition to the human workforce. And we will further develop that capability. We aim to have 30% of our processes robotized by the end of this year.
And what's the reaction from those 3 clients been, even though it's only the first month?
They're quite happy about that because the processes that the robots are helping with are essentially the very low added value processes, reprocessing cases that have been already reported to Vigilance, a lot of administrative stuff, not really the scientific part of the pharmacovigilance. So actually it helps us to free up the resources of our pharmacists and medics to do the higher added value services.
And you mentioned the scope for consultancy acquisitions. Presumably technology is very important, and IP behind these robotics. Do you already feel you're in a comfortable or leading position there?
We believe that we are creating an environment in which we could create an IP in the RPA space in pharmacovigilance. We are even thinking of a couple of acquisitions where we could open the new revenue stream for our business in consultancy for deploying robots to pharmaceutical industry.
Mm-hmm. And how comfortable are you in terms of global reach from your pool of human expertise? The world's largest pharma market is obviously in America. There are going to be opportunities in China presumably as well. Do you feel you're already in a good position, or is that an area also where you'd be looking to add on businesses?
I believe we are in very good position in the EU and the US. We are actually serving more than 30 US clients already, mostly from the EU, but we are growing organically in the US. We definitely want to go to Asia, so we have been active in training regulators, training industry in China, South Korea, Japan, Australia. So we are preparing grounds for the expansion to these regions, and we believe that we will achieve that expansion this year and next year.
Mm-hmm. And then perhaps the last question for you again on geography, but we live on an island and we get very paranoid about Brexit and potential implications. It sounds to me with this spread of expertise and talent across the world that whatever might happen in terms of Brexit and large groups, I won't say abandoning London, but seeking expertise elsewhere, you're very well placed to provide that for an existing client in a different country or a different continent.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Even though that we are a UK-based company, we have offices in the continental Europe. So we could move our services of EUQPPV or headquarter services that we already run for our UK-based clients to continental Europe, to Germany, to Czech Republic, Croatia, wherever the clients prefer. And so actually the effect of Brexit on our business is minimal and actually might be even positive in some instances.
Yeah, well, I hope that's the case. Thank you very much, Jan.
Thank you so much, Andy.